Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, today we're back to working on our Vulcan steam locomotive out at the Georgia Museum of Agriculture. It's a 1917 Vulcan Ironworks 040 steam locomotive. And previously were going to attempt to make some new bearings for this locomotive, but we ran into some issues, basically having to start that part over. Ultimately, I want to make new sets of brasses for it. I've got some castings on their way in right now, hopefully coming in soon, that we can get back on this and get new parts made. In the meantime, we need to get the locomotive back up and running until we can get these new parts made. So we're going to make do with the old bearings a little bit longer. They still have some life left in them, but they are in bad need of being replaced. In order to get all this done, when we tore all this side rod off, this is the side rod off of that one side of the locomotive. So this is basically the rod that connects the back wheel to the front wheel, and this is on the left side of the locomotive. It's got the exact same setup on the other side. When we make new bearings, we're going to replace all of them, but we had some issues on this side of the locomotive that we need to deal with, and it really boiled down to this little wedge right here. This is a wedge that fits up against this bearing. If you notice, you got an angle here, taper. This taper matches a taper in here, and you can slide this up and down. There's a bolt that goes through this, you slide it up and down, and that's how you tighten this bearing up. Well, the screw that goes through this, the bolt that goes through this, had basically jammed up. We were unable to even get it out. We had to cut this part out. It happens. This is a common occurrence with these wedges. They just, at least the original wedges that are in there, I've been slowly replacing them as they have failed over probably the last 10 years. This is one of the older ones. I don't know if it's original to the locomotive, but it's been on there for quite some time. I need to make a new wedge. And once we do that, we're going to basically get this rod reassembled and ready to go back on the locomotive. The other thing I need to do is check the spacings. Again, these bearings have a lot of wear in them. We're going to have to shim them up to get the proper spacing between the two, which is 5 feet exactly is what they should be. So we're going to be getting all that ready, and then we'll take it back out and get it reinstalled on the locomotive until we can get the new bearings made. So right now, my job is to make a new wedge. And once we do that, we'll go ahead and get this thing kind of dry assembled here on the bench to the right length so that it's ready to go back onto the locomotive. Let's get a new wedge made. So this is the other wedge. It's in good shape. Relatively, the bolt and everything works. I don't think this is one that I made. I think this is an older one. Not sure about the bolt. I may have made that bolt. I don't remember. But anyway, what we got to do is basically make something similar to this one. Now, the other wedge is a little bit different. It's a little bit different dimensions because it fits on the other side. This one has rounded corners because it actually fits up into these corners on the brace that holds it in place, whereas the other wedge goes on the other side, so it doesn't have the rounded corners. Everything's square. I got some steel stock here that we're going to make this out of. Basically, we're just going to go cut that to length. I am going to have to mill the width down a little bit. I think it's about 1/4 of an inch too wide, and then we've got to mill that taper on it so that it will properly go. And then this, of course, will also get a hole drilled and tapped all the way through, and we're going to have to make a new bolt to go through there as well. So let's see if we can get this thing knocked out. Over here at the marble saw, and we're going to go ahead and cut this piece out to length so that we can start our milling machine process. Over here at the mill machine, I've got my block in here, and I just used a square to kind of square it up in this way. We should be parallel here. This is the original surfaces, so that should be square. And I just want to clean up this saw cut, and then we're going to flip it over and cut it to length. So we'll just come in, raise our table up until we just start making contact. Just a little bit over here to clean up, not much. We'll come back across. That'll be fine. All right, we're gonna flip this over. I think I'll go deburr those edges. We'll flip it over and do the other side. All right, we got it flipped over. This should be square, and it is. And we'll come across this side and just clean it up and then get a length and mill it to length. Let's just check real quick and see where we're at. Just gonna use my depth micrometer here. We're at 2.6. I need to go to 2.5, so I got 100 thousandths to take off of there. We'll just dial that in, probably do 25 per pass. Oh, perfect, right on the money. So up next, this block of steel is 2 1/4 inches wide. It needs to be 2 inches wide, so we need to take 1/4 of an inch off of the in this direction. So we'll go ahead and take that off, 250 thou. We should have around 25 more thou to go here. Get in here. Yeah, we got exactly 25 thou to go. So I'm gonna dial that in. This will be my last pass. And that should get us 2 inches. All right, let me go get this deburred, and next we'll cut our taper. So our final step here on the milling is to get this taper on here. This taper is 2 inches per foot. Now, there's lots of ways that I can accurately measure a taper. I could make an angle block to mount this thing on in the vise to use as a template. I could set it up on the sign plate and do the final grind on the surface grinder. But at the end of the day, the tolerances on this are not that crazy. We're just going to use the original part as our template to make the new part. So I'm going to drop this down in the vise. Let's see, I need to get that down a little bit lower. All right, that's riding across both of them there. And then I'm just going to clamp my second piece on top of it, like such. And that should give me the same angle. Now, it doesn't matter which way the angle's oriented on this block. It'll flip around 180 degrees, so that's not a problem. So let me get this good and tight, and we'll come in here, and basically I'm just going to mill it down until I get down to this corner down here. So we'll just mill this flat now, and that'll replicate that angle. See if this cleans it up. This might be the last pass. We have to make one more, I'm not sure. It's going to be right there at the edge. That's perfect. We'll just go all the way across this time. And we are good to go. So we've got the basic wedge made. Now what we need to do is get a hole drilled through there and tapped 5/8 of an inch, 5/8 11. I just got a couple of parallels up underneath the bottom so I can drill through there and have some clearance for that to come through the bottom. And we'll tighten that up in the vise. I need to come in here and find the center of where I need to drill this. It's actually not an exact center. It's 5/8 from the edge, and then in the center in this direction, which that's 2 inches, so 1 inch over. Let me get an edge finder, and we'll locate that area. I got an edge finder in here. I'm going to come down, and it's a little wobbler. You come in and move that over until it jumps over to the side, and then you've got it right tangent with the edge of that edge finder. Just slowly moving the table in right there. I'll zero my digital readout, and what we'll do now is raise up this edge finder is a 1/2 inch, so I need to dial in 250 thousandths to get to the center of it. So 250, let's get right there. I'm going to re-zero my digital readout. Now I need to go in 5/8 of an inch to get on the center of the hole, which would be 0.625. I'll just read that in directly on the digital readout again. 625 right there, and I'll zero again. Go ahead and lock my table in that axis. Now we'll come to the other direction. Do the same thing, find the edge. Right there. Again, 250 thousandths to the center, and then I'm just going to go to 1 inch 250 here. So we'll go 1.2. Right there. Zero that out, lock my table in that direction, and that should be right on center of where we need to be. Got a 1/4 inch drill bit here, and I just want to drill a pilot hole for this the tap out. So we'll just go ahead and drill as far through as I can get with this bit. Put a little anchor lube on here to give a little lubrication. There we go. I'm going to switch over to a 17/32, check and make sure I had the right one here. This will let me get the tap size I need. There we go. I'm just going to tap this out over here on the vise. Again, put a little anchor lube on my tap. And because I counterbored that or counter drilled that, I got a nice starter to kind of help start that tap to get it lined up, because it's the same diameter as the outside of the thread. So we'll just drop that down in there, and we'll just tap this by hand. There we go. That is through. Just go down through there a little bit and make sure we got it all the way down. And we'll back that tap out. And that piece is made. All right, so our new wedge fits in there just right. That's just what we need. Got our hole in there. The only thing left to do here is I need to make a bolt to go in here. This is a 5/8 inch bolt according to the blueprint. It's 6 5/8 inches long, threaded fully. I've got some hex stock here that we're gonna make a new bolt out of. Why do I not just go buy one? I don't think you can get one that's fully threaded this size. Even if you can, I got the stock here, so we're just gonna make it. So that's the game plan. Let's go over to the lathe and make that real quick. Got my hex stock here chucked up in the lathe. I'm just gonna start by facing the end of this, getting a good surface on the bottom to work off of. We're also going to put a center in it because it's going to be sticking out fairly long. That'll give us some support while we're turning it and threading it. So come here with a center drill. We'll go ahead and get that center in there. That'll support it. I'll loosen this up and pull it out now. According to the blueprints, I need 6 inches of thread and about a 5/8 inch head on that. So I'm going to stick it out. Yeah, it's about 8 inches. That'll give me plenty of room to get everything done and plenty of room to work around. I'll tighten that up. And we'll run that center up on the end. That will support that while we're turning it. All right, we need to cut down 6 inches. I'm gonna come in here and just touch off on the end. And then I'm gonna zero out my digital readout. I'm gonna measure in 6 inches. Right there. And I'm just gonna make a mark on my metal. That way I'll have a visual cue of where I wanna stop at. And we'll come in here and get started. All right, that should be the size. I'm going to go in here and face out the bottom side of that head, make it nice and square. Check my measurement. Yep, we're right on size. We're ready to cut threads. I think we're ready to start threading. I'm going to put a little oil on this. And so wait for a number to come around here. I'm going to go almost to the top, but I'm going to stop at about right in there. Let me just verify that I'm on 11. We should be, yep, 11 threads per inch. And we'll continue on. Look at there. Beautiful fit. All right, we're going to take that out. Final step here, I want to part this off. Let me speed this lathe up a little bit. According to the blueprints, the head's supposed to be about 5/8 of an inch high, which is a little higher than a normal bolt, but that's what it calls for. I'm going to chuck this thing up. This thing's hot as a firecracker. I want to work on that head. I'm just going to come in here and face that off, get a nice head there. And also want to relieve the corners on that. Also want to relieve the top of that. I'm just going to use a threading tool here, and I just want to cut those, get down to where I just kind of knock off the corners here and get down into the center of the metal, which I did right there. So that just kind of relieves those corners and makes it a little bit easier to handle. And that bolt is done. So now comes the really fun part of this project. I need to get everything reassembled, and I need to have the right spacing between these two driver pins on the connecting rod. So this is the actual connecting rod. We got the straps that go on here. The bearings are going to fit on the ends of this. There's adjustments in there. I went ahead over on my lathe and I actually turned some blanks of, this is just some plastic material, but I turned them the same size diameter as the pins that are on the wheels so that I can basically mock this up. I know from the blueprints and I know from making measurements on the locomotive that from the center of the two pins, it needs to be exactly 5 feet long. And so because of the wear in these bearings, there were lots of shims that were in there. We took all those out. I don't know that the shims that were in there were properly spaced. We're going to make sure this thing is properly spaced so that when we take it back out, we can put the shims in where they need to go, and everything should work out fine. So that's what we're working on here. We're going to start out on this end. I've got my strap that fits up on here. I've got my bearing that fits up on here. Let me go grab my blueprint because it tells me how this stuff needs to go. On this side here, this bushing fits in here. The wedge fits behind this, and there is an 1/8 inch shim that goes between the wedge and the bushing. So this is going to basically come up in here like such, and the strap is going to come on the end and capture all this in there. So let me kind of get this going here. We'll just kind of rough assemble this. All right. So that goes in there like such. Shim goes behind that. The wedge goes behind that. I'm going to kind of go ahead and take our new rod here that we made. And these straps fit up on here, and you got two pins, tapered bolts that kind of come up from the bottom and hold all that in place. Now this is the mock-up of the actual piece we're going to be fitting in here. And obviously I'm going to have to put some shims behind this, but for right now, I'm just going to kind of leave it in there because I do have some adjustment in that wedge that we can pull things up, and I need to kind of figure out where that needs to be so I can figure if I need to put a shim on this side of that piece. So we'll go ahead and get the other side kind of mocked up and go from there. So I've kind of got the connecting rod assembled here. I got the wedges in place. Basically the wedges are all set where they've got the most adjustment in them. And what I want to do now is just kind of see what I need to do as far as shims are concerned to get these things properly spaced out. So again, I got all of my adjustment on both ends of this. And so that you understand how this works, you've got one adjusting wedge that's on this side of the journal here that we're rubbing against. When I adjust this adjuster, it's going to adjust the spacing between the two. There's also an adjuster out here, but it's on the back side of it. And whenever I tighten this one up, what it's going to do is it's going to basically, it's not going to change the distance between them, but it will take up any slack that's on behind these two bearings. So you got two different adjustments, and they both adjust different things. And you can use that for fine tuning things once you get over to the locomotive. But right now, there is considerable space on the back side of both of these bearings that we need to put shims in place to kind of get them in there, or on one side or the other. First thing I want to do is check my spacing. So again, according to the blueprints, and also I went out and measured on the locomotive, and this is the correct value. It's 5 feet from center to center. And with these plugs that I've got in here, I've got the centers that I can actually go in there and measure it. Now what I'm using is some trammel points. If you've never seen trammel points, they're just some little points that clamp to a beam. I marked 5 feet on here, just using a tape measure. You know, this is not something I'm worried about measuring to thousandths of an inch. We just got to get it pretty darn close. I can take one end of this, put it right in that center. I can come over here, and on that plastic, I can kind of put a little arc, make a mark down there. And now I can come in here and measure how much of a gap there is. And that tells me how much I need to shim on either side to take that gap up to move this out to that point. Once I do that, I'm then going to come back and we'll figure out the shims that need to go behind these, and we'll still have some adjustments we can make to tighten and snug everything up. But I want to basically start where I have the maximum amount of adjustment on either side to work with. So let me get in here and measure this, and we'll figure out how much shimming we need. We'll probably put shims on the inside on both sides and kind of take half of it on each side. Then we'll come back and work on the other shims on the outside and see what we need to do. So you can see the mark, you can see the trammel, and it's right at a 1/2 inch. That's what I was guessing just looking at it. So basically what I need is to put a 1/4 inch shim on each end of this bearing, and that should move it out a 1/2 inch, and we should be lined up. So I'm going to go ahead and take these back apart, put some shims in there, and we'll recheck it. So I just slid the bearing up. What I'm going to do is, this is a 1/4 inch piece of metal. This is actually one of the shims that was being used before somewhere. I'm going to slide it in there behind it, and we'll just put all this back together. And that should help us get this. Now this should be over a 1/4 inch. I need to do the same thing the other side. So let me get this one lined up and get the pins back in, and we'll go do the other one. Now on this side, you've got the spacer, or the wedge that's going to be up here, and when you tighten it up, it'll move down and that'll push things forward. But this runs directly up against this, and because of the way the hole is in here, you can't put a shim on the back side of that. The shim's got to go between the wedge and the brass bearing in here. Now there was already a 1/4 inch shim in there because that's what the blueprints call for, but I'm going to add another 1/4 inch in there. That's going to put a 1/2 inch shim in that spacing. We'll put our wedge back in here, and then we'll have to run our screw all the way back up from the bottom to get it back in place, and then we can put everything back together and check it again with our trammels and see where we are. So let me get this screw back in this wedge, and then we'll check things out again. And look at there, our trammels are matching up pretty good, as I expected them to. In fact, they're practically perfect. That's good. All right, that worked out just like as anticipated. Now I got a good bit of space on the back side of that. I should be able to get a rough idea of what that is and measure that. Again, I do have some adjustments, so if my shims aren't super tight right here, we can adjust on both ends to fine tune things. We got full adjustment length in that wedge. So I just need to figure out what the shims go on the back side on both ends, and I think we'll be ready to call this thing spaced out, and we can go put it back on the locomotive. Been playing with my shims. I've actually made a couple of adjustments since the last time you saw this. I've got one end of the trammel firmly into the center. I'm gonna bring this one in, and you can see that's a near perfect fit. I think we got our shims just like we need them. And with that, we're gonna take this out to the museum and put it back on the locomotive and get it going, which we just need to basically put our shims back in to the same places. When I take this apart, when I get out there, I'll make sure I get everything laid out just right, and it should go right back together. So there you go. Well, with that, I think we've got this ready to go back on. We got our new wedge and our new adjusting screw made down here that was broken basically in the other one, which was not allowing us to make adjustments to it. And again, this is just going to be a temporary fix until we get the new bearings made, which hopefully is not going to be too much longer. Hopefully we can get those back from the foundry here before too long, get them machined and back on the locomotive. And when that is done, we should be able to eliminate most of the shimming that's going on in here right now and get some bearings back in here that don't have all the wear in them. But this should, like I said, these bearings have been on here probably original to the locomotive. They've been working with the shims in them. They will continue working for a little while longer until we can get this, get the new bearings done. And then we should be refreshed and it'd be ready to roll for another 100 years, thereabouts. That's the game plan anyway. So guys, with that, that's going to be a wrap. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Those thumbs up and comments are always greatly appreciated. Hit that bell icon up there to get notifications when new videos are posted. Big, huge thank you to everybody who subscribes to the channel, as well as those who support the channel through Patreon, PayPal, etc. Your support really helps me to be able to take the time to film this stuff and do the editing and take the extra time. That's the biggest thing. It's a time thing. It takes me twice as long to do anything in the shop when the camera's running, and your contributions there allow me to compensate for that and be able to take the time to do it. So guys, with that, we'll catch you on the next video again. Thanks for watching.